Hello, and welcome to the Bardic INNspiration.
Let's talk about angels today. What are the three types of angels?
So the three there are going to be the Deva, the Planetaire, and then the Solar.
Yeah. And they all have different abilities, they all have different stats, do we want to split them up separately or just discuss them as a whole?
Oh yeah, they're lowly angels, and there's the medium important angels, and then there's the archangels.
Yeah, basically. So my way of seeing it is, if you look at them separately, Devas are sort of like your common everyday angel.
Your pawns.
They can disguise themselves as other humanoids, and they are essentially what I would imagine is like sort of like the gods enforcers on the material planes, in addition to basically their common like loyal angelic followers in the upper planes. They're naturally, all angels are, but in particular Devas are very capable healers. They have an ability called Healing Touch, so they can just magically heal people of disease, poison, heal people. They can also get rid of curses or blindness or deafness. And they also can fight. They're decently good fighters. All angels have a benefit of getting radiant damage to their attacks. So while a Deva's natural fighting ability isn't the most impressive, they also deal radiant damage, which is... it adds a nice punch to what they can do.
I believe all the angels have like a greater form of that damage and healing touch. Like
yes,
each one goes through is like, so the Deva is like average of 20, the Planetaire is 30, and then the Solar is 40. It's kind of the same scaling with the bonus die for damage, radiant damage on attacks.
Correct.
Do they appear often in lore? Would you recommend having them more frequently in a world or less frequently?
I discussed this on the way over here that I don't have them currently a plan for them in my world, but then Dan was mentioning that my world currently the storyline deals with devils. So like that brought up the point of why aren't angels in the play as well? So like I should have more angels in my world coming down, maybe visiting, maybe being acolytes.
Angels versus demons.
Yeah, angels versus demons. So, or devils.
Well, any fiend really. It's
right.
the kind of the whole cliche good versus evil battles. But the way that I see that, or the way that I remember lore for the angels is only for dire circumstances. They're not really much for like coming down and being like the head priest of a church just to get more worshippers towards this god, so the god gets more power. It's more of this prime plane or the Shadowfell or the Fey Wilds. They're a little out of corruption. They're gaining more evil than the plane is, the denizens of the plane are going to be able to handle. Let's send some of our celestial kin to maybe combat it a little bit. And that's why I kind of see like the Devas as like the entry, the pawns. They're, I wouldn't say like a lower angel, but they're definitely those ones that you send in mass, and if they can't handle it, then you send in the Planetaires, and they're like battle hungry. And if they can't handle it, then you send in the Solars, which are probably just as dangerous as the fiends they're fighting.
Devas are the squad, the infantry that goes in.
Yeah.
Planetaires are like the shock troops, and then the Solars are the
generals.
Generals, exactly.
Nukes.
Yeah.
So, quick question before we continue. I just had the thought. We talked about with the Empyreans that it's possible that an evil or chaotic god could have an Empyrean. Is it possible for a chaotic or evil god to have a Deva or angel of some sort?
Yeah.
The way that I see it is like, yes, there's the whole Christianity or Catholic where there's the fallen angels become like a Lucifer himself or Gabriel, where they became exiled from the divine planes. I wouldn't say it's more of a moral, I mean the book says it's a moral compass switch, but I kind of think of it more as the fact that they're in their mindset, they're still lawful good. It's just how they're going about this lawful goodness
that wasn't like accepted by their god.
Yeah, exactly. If they went too far, and it was detrimental. It was against the overall ideal of the god, and so the god is like, I don't own you anymore.
Another way that can happen, which there's actually an example of this in one of the adventures published by Wizards, which is angels can also be tricked, essentially, and that can lead to corruption to them as well. So, kind of like how Daniel was saying that they can be lawful good, and in their minds they are still lawful good, but if you can trick their perception of like what's going on around them, they can start behaving in evil manners while still thinking they're doing the right thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Don't angels have true sight?
Yes.
Remember that was correct. So how do you trick someone that can see through everything?
So solar angels and planetary angels not only have true sight, but they have a divine... If it knows if you're lying.
Right.
It just knows. If it hears a lie, it knows it's a lie, and it'll probably call you out on it.
Oh, man.
That's why it's really... I would say it's really hard. Really, really hard to alter the perception of at least a planetar or a solar. A Deva, not so much.
A Deva does not have divine sense. So.
Or
divine
true
awareness.
sight.
Yes.
And then there's also, you can go as far as magical corruption, where it's not necessarily trying to trick the devil, or the angels. It's you're just straight up manipulating their mindset.
So what exactly can a Deva do as far as combat? Seeing as even if they are lower than the other ones as far as power, are they still strong? Do they have a lot of combat potential, or is it just kind of angel-esque?
Out of the three, this one carries the mace, so it does the usual mace damage of 1d6, very average, other than the attack bonus,
so they hit
which
hard.
is just an 8. So
I like how their stats are basically the same as a min-maxer that brings their pre-rolled character to a new campaign.
Right.
18, 18, 18, 18, except it's a little different for the Deva. If you look at it, it's kind of like the ideal character. Like the perfect quote-unquote character where they've got the best stats. They have some magic, they have combat abilities, they have healing, they have flight.
But to add to what I was saying, all of the angels have the angelic weapons, so they all do a certain amount of radiant damage to the hits. So with the Devas, it's 48. The planetars are 5d8 and
68 for
the solars. Yeah. So yeah, nothing specific. Like this is the I hate using the word, but lower of the they aren't the fighters, whereas the planetars are, or the solars. These are the clerics. These are the healing ones. As
so
Dan said,
they're more support than is what you're saying. Like with what they have and what they can do is more.
Yeah.
More of like a watch over the world for my god kind of idea.
Right.
Okay.
Now, also to be fair, we are relatively speaking about a Deva compared to other angels in that it is an inferior fighter.
Yeah.
On their own, though, like
That's
against like mere mortals, say if you're 5th level, a Deva will probably kill you.
Yeah.
They are a CR 10 in the monster manual, and like they do have good stats. Like if you also look like their armor class, AC 17, they have on average about 136 hit points, and because like most other angels, they can fly, so they can get away in combat if it gets too risky for them.
Right.
They also, all angels have this as well, they have magic resistance. So they actually are a little harder to kill, like in addition to their armor, with spells, because they have some level of resistance to magical effects that are used against them. So it's not to say when we say that they're like the lower end of angels, they're still very capable creatures in combat. And they can still, serve their gods for whatever purposes they need to. They're just, obviously not as good as the next two, which are, by all designs, essentially D&D bosses.
So let's go on to the next two. We have the Planetar. What makes them different?
They are the warriors. If things really do start to get bad and the Deva, it's kind of out of the Deva's hands, where, say, the fiends or the natural order of evil is starting to take over the three prime planes, then that's when these higher deities will often send the Planetar, which is kind of the elite military force of angels. They come down, they start, combating, but the way that I like to look at it is that it's also at detriment of the planes themselves. They're going to, without hesitation, slay evil at any cost,
Right.
even at the cost of mortals that may be standing in the way.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time arguing that they're good because they would go to such lengths. They don't take human life into preservation,
Nope.
But then that feels more like a whole religion debate, and let's not get into that.
They will upturn a city just to find the evil
Yeah.
and destroy it. So unlike the Devas, these ones have more spells, like Blade Barrier or Flame Strike with their sword. Just like decimate crowds of people.
So what you guys would like to say is that he would have like a third description. Instead of just lawful good, he would be lawful good chaotic. It's like a pseudo chaotic.
Well, and that's where morals in D&D in general are just kind of swayed. What you may view as lawful good, I'm looking at you and it's very chaotic good because you're going to extreme lengths. You're not, from my eyes, are not being very lawful. It's they're following their own laws. And it's it's
Their
really
laws say one thing
up to the interpreter on what the actual moral code
Right.
is.
Whoever they are justifiers. They are the ones, whatever their gods want them to do, they're going to go do it. If they want them to go destroy this evil by any means, it's going to happen. Or they're going to, I don't know, do angels die in a sense? Or are they brought back to the heavenly planes?
They die.
Okay.
They die. They are very much like fiends, except for they don't go back to the planes. They don't have that. Their immortality lies in their age. They don't age. They don't disease. They just die.
Okay.
And then it only seems to be in combat or by their god's will in which they live or die. But trying to fight a angel, like you said, against mortals, it's going to be nigh impossible.
Right.
Without preparation, at
I would
least.
see it more like, I would add, because they don't have this, but unless I'm not reading it, if they do die, they explode in radiance and a crater is built up or something along where that person dies, especially with a Planetar or a Solar.
I kind of like the idea that the Supernatural took on it, is where it kind of leaves a scar on where they died, a bright flash of light, and then just a scar of wings. Almost charcoaled into the background behind the creature.
Gotcha.
I like that idea. I don't know about exploding for damage. I know that there are creatures out there that do stuff like that. I mean, it's not to say it can happen. I mean,
Sure.
Any DM can do anything different. I also like the idea that these would probably be the guardians of, so say a party, let's say we're running an evil campaign and your goal is to go after, Palor. These will probably be the guards to Palor's castle or Palor's location. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't really see the Devas. They would probably be the cannon fodder sent to stop you first. But after you reach the plane, it's going to be the Planetars that'll be there at the gates, being like, you can't pass.
Right. They're the judgment.
I think even earlier than that in an evil campaign, when the evil party starts to gain some level of higher prominence, so maybe I would even say as early as 8th or 9th level.
Yeah.
One single Planetar comes down and just tries to stop you then and there, as not necessarily to kill you, but sort of a warning of if this is the path you chose,
if this, you continue down this path, yeah.
I would say Heimdall is a Planetar from Thor.
Heimdall?
Heimdall, yeah.
Yeah, I was
Heimdall.
Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah,
kind of
he's
the
the guardian
guardians
at
of
the
the
gates.
planes, yeah.
And he's a
Wings.
You could admit you were just looking at the picture and that's what you saw. So
No, I've seen
Yeah,
the
he's
movies.
kind of got the sword and
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 read
the
the
sword
comics.
down, standing
bald,
like,
the
resolute.
pupilless eyes. Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. All right, and then the last one, of course, is the Solar, the archangels of these.
Yeah, I would say they border god-like strength, and I mean they're kind of described as such. They have phenomenal abilities. In common lore, there's only a limited number of them in total, not like total per god. It's just total.
Oh, it's like the four archangels. It's just like these are limited.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the Great Wheel cosmology. I think there's 24 different planes, and I kind of like to think of it as like there's one of these solar angels for each.
Right. I would say like if a god were to take a form, a Solar would be what, in my world at least, is what they would take form in.
Oh, as to like not instantly burn out the eyes of any mortal who sees it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that idea. The thing that awestrucks me, and I'm jumping right into combat here with the Solar, is the slaying longbow.
Oh yeah, it's like absolutely terrifying because essentially it's just a walking murder machine that, as a fight goes on, becomes incredibly more dangerous.
I'm thinking along the lines of, if let's go back to the evil campaign, this is like the final boss for that evil party. If they slay a Solar or manage to steal the slaying longbow, they're near unstoppable. They would have to fight a god next. That's the only way possible. Because that slaying longbow, at least I would interpret it, it's the bow itself, not the angel's power that flows through it. So having that bow in an evil campaign is like, and you guys basically take over rulership of the entire world. I don't know.
Until all the gods lied.
Or at least you could, if you could ever return back to the prime material plane. For now, you're stuck in Paler's heaven.
Right.
That bow alone, I mean, finger of death worthy, but constant, every attack, it sucks. And it's awesome at the
Just
same
to
time.
help people, what exactly does it do? And why is it so terrifying?
So basically, it's one of those effects where if you're below 100 HP and you get hit by this...
190.
Oh, 190?
Yeah.
It says in my book, 100.
100.
hit
Just
points.
kidding. I have a typo.
Yeah. That you have to make a save. If you fail that, you're instantly dead.
It's not a hard save, though, and if you're fighting a Solar at this level, you should have a decent Constitution save with the proficiencies and not. Not saying
It's
that...
a hard save for a wizard.
Yeah.
True.
It's a hard save if you don't have a paladin in the
It's
party.
a hard save for a lich.
Stay close to your paladin.
I don't know, because, I mean, with most casters, if assuming feats are allowed in the game, you have Warcaster, which gives you advantage on the save. So you have that little +5 bonus, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a paladin with the aura boost.
Yeah, you have a paladin with the aura boost. If you take resilient feat, it adds your proficiency. Like, there are many ways to make sure you save, but even then,
You still got that one.
it's not just that. It's going to whittle you down while doing this. So eventually, you're just going to be, every time it hits you with that bow, it's
How
going
much
to be making
damage
an
does
attack.
it do if it doesn't kill you?
On average, it can do 42 damage to you on a hit,
Yeah.
and then make you, if you're below 100, make a save or die.
I would say
It would chip at a barbarian.
Yeah, likely the barbarian would probably be the one to survive the most hits off of it.
Yeah, the most, but 3 hits.
But
and
these
you're
things-
below 100.
Well, these things are also intelligent enough to pick off the magic users first, and then just focus one-on-one with the barb.
Yeah.
It would just long range shot find that wizard and just be like, you're dead.
Well, it's not the only long range it can do. It can release its great sword and just have it fly around and attack too.
Yeah, and then they
So
all...
just keep in combat with the barbarian with your great sword, and then just pick off the healer and the magic like. It would be definitely, this would be boss level kind of material. High end game level 19, like 17, 18, 19, or 20. Like, it's definitely end game material kind of boss.
I love that fact that it, like, if you just release it, it releases its greatsword, it pulls out its slaying bow, and then the two, three, 4 attacks. Just slaying monsters.
And if you want to make it even more dangerous and ridiculously crazy, its armor class of 21 can be increased with the Guardian Shield, the one where you just release and it flies around you.
Yeah, no. I mean...
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you want to get ridiculous, like, somehow your characters are able to hit a 21 reliably, maybe boost its AC with an actual armor or, have the floating shield. There are some ways that you can boost it around.
Ridiculous is the legendary actions, which, the other two don't have. I mean, to teleport to a spot, shoot off your arrow, and then teleport again at a different point, or even this blinding gaze. God, that's great. Like, blind the creature. They're terrible for the whole, round?
No, it's permanent.
It's until
it gets healed by magic. So to kind of go, and this gives a good idea of how to use a solar, is that while they do have this slaying longbow, a lot of its benefits actually come from just getting into the thick of combat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, you can utilize this in a way that can really manipulate battlefield and move around a lot, cause the party to kind of freak out and not know where to go. Because for one legendary action, it can basically teleport 120 feet. On its turn, it can fly 150 feet. Yeah. So it has a lot of mobility. It can use 2 of its 3 legendary actions. It can use Searing Burst, which basically every creature it chooses within 10 feet of it has to succeed on a DC 23 saving throw, and then basically it's going to do a total of 8d6 damage on a fail or half on a success. Just for you being next to it. It's burning you away.
So it teleports, and then it's next after the end of the person's turn, the next turn, it freaking explodes into a fireball, and then its turn comes around, it gets all those legendary actions back. It's definitely very mobile, it's very heavy hitter. I mean, I like to think that anything in the monster manual with a legendary action is definitely in-game material.
Yeah.
Unless for some reason you manage to figure out a way and throw it early, definitely, not all, just most.
Going off of how we've treated the Diva and the Planetar, what exactly are their purpose as a solar? I mean, yes, they can be one of the final things you would fight before you fight the god, or it itself be the final boss, but what is their purpose amongst the hierarchy of angels?
The right hand of God, the word of God. Yeah, it would be the last person before God himself, or a god or herself.
So would they just be the constant guard, just always there, always protecting?
Oh yeah, if you get to the hall of the god, he's going to be sitting in the chair of the god, and you're going to walk up to him, and he's going to stand up and with the sword and just be like, wow, well done, let's get this fight over with.
I also think that very much like how the Planetars are very destructive, and this is why I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast that these are probably the most dangerous. If there's a prince of evil, or for some reason the opposite, they will meet on the prime material plane and they will destroy heaven, hell, and earth just to get this prince of evil if they can.
So what I'm getting out of these angels, especially with how you're describing it, is that they get worse and worse as they go for worse and worse situations.
Yeah, this is a world apocalypse kind of good and evil fight. This is what you would see in said fights, is solars versus demon princes.
I feel bad for them being
or devil princes, fiends.
They only have 3 types of angels as opposed to devils having a shit ton.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, they have a lot more power behind their belt, especially with all these kind of powers.
Yeah, and I mean, these aren't the only celestials, but these are the primary angels.
I was gonna say, because we've talked about Empyreans, unicorns.
Well, I'm saying as far as the angels go, as far as their archetype.
I also don't see them as getting out much. They're just at right hand of God. They're not going out there doing things.
Unless there is a god that end up becoming, or someone that's arisen to a god and is on the prime material plane.
Vecna.
I could see that them sending a solar to then help combat that if they can.
Yeah. Mercer didn't.
No, he didn't.
No, that was up to
His
the
gods
party.
may not have had solars, you know? Who knows if they even have it? And plus, their gods didn't.
Yeah.
His gods didn't seem like as powerful enough to have. He only had planetars.
Well, on their own plane, and that's kind of where I think like the limitation is too. Is I feel like the solars are kind of blocked by that gate, so they're much like the gods. They can't just waltz into the prime planes. They kind of have to. They're kind of blocked by this celestial gate, or this is
Probably be
outer-
really difficult to
yeah.
send them to the prime material plane. If,
yeah,
unless
and
it's
I think that's
truly
kind of like
necessary.
what like the reason Mercer did is because first off, the gods want to protect themselves more than they want to protect everyone else, and then secondly, they might have trouble getting through said gate that high level casters can get through with plane shift.
Right.
And I got one more question. Is something we haven't really addressed with these things. Do angels just appear? Are they created? Are they born? Do the gods just simply have them
Created
made?
by will.
Just they
Like
appear.
I would say that the Deva and the Planetars are just created by sheer will of the gods or the deities, but I feel like solar is actually a piece of the gods' overall essence, and that's why there's so limited of them. It creates so much work and it tires out a god so much that it would. That's why there's probably a limit to them. At least that's my theory.
That's a good question, because I'm like, okay, so what if they're like devils? What if they are all devas, and then they start to go up, higher devils, higher,
Oh, climb the
Hierarchy.
angelic hierarchy. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
What if,
Jeez, I can English.
they make it to Planetar?
So really, what you're saying is the Devas can level up.
Yeah, exactly.
So wait, they have hair, lose hair, and they gain hair again.
Yep. It's a
I mean,
godly fact.
I know planetars can probably have hair. You can choose to have them have hair, but
But the
normally they're
hair is
depicted-
radiant this time. No, I'm just kidding.
Normally they're depicted as bald.
An idea I had while we were sitting and discussing this is, so imagine a religion gets created around a god. As long as someone or some group of people believe in this god, it causes this god to exist.
Okay.
In addition to that, the way solars are created is, say, like every time a large cathedral or monument to these gods is created, it essentially creates some sort of divine magic, or it could even be a magical artifact of some sort that resides in this temple. And almost like a phylactery, that solar's life is now tied to that temple.
Ooh.
Essentially.
That's cool.
And the more that gods gets worshipped, like across the cosmos and with all these different temples, it gets more solars that actually are like follow it.
I like that idea, especially with the if you wanted to do heaven and hell against each other. That'd be one hell of a target to go after. Would be go after cathedrals to lessen the power of those beings, if that was a more known fact.
Exactly. You even have I was gonna say you even have a point in the game, evil mage or something is going around trying to essentially like tip the balance in favor of demons, walks over to an area where, say, it's like a large city and like within it's like 2 or 3 like cathedrals, maybe like the place of like that religion's like mortal hierarchy. He just comes over and he's like meteor swarm and just levels the entire city.
Yeah.
Suddenly that god's power just drops because of that one act.
Especially if it's a heavily religious city.
Exactly.
And to kind of build off of your theory, where they're kind of tied to these cathedrals, what if like super devout religious characters, whether acolytes, clerics, priests, that when they die, they kind of, instead of their soul just moving on, their soul ascends to angelicood, where they become devas, or like the true devouts become planetars, where they're just like, here, you've been such a great worshiper, you can continue to serve me in your afterlife.
Another idea I wouldn't mind having is to go along with the idea of having more followers equals more power, is that maybe once the god starts, he literally has almost little to no power and no followers as far as angels in any sense, divas, planetars, solars, and any but the more followers he gets, the more abilities to create divas, planetars, and later on, once he gets to a higher point, to actually be able to create solars to help protect his newly found power. and be able to create his own following from that. So, and the more followers that way, the more power.
Now that we're done discussing mechanics and ideas, have we used them in our campaigns? Or do we have ideas other than these ones that are already set out for our campaigns? I know we've come across one. Dan, let's discuss your Deva encounter with...
Right, so there was one example that I have. Oh, excuse me. There is one example I have where the party was... Well, I think... Have we shared this story before?
We
have
did.
shared this story
Yeah, we
before.
did.
We kind of went over it briefly with the our previous
When we were
episode
talking-
with
yeah,
the personal
previous
quests
episode. Okay.
or personal campaigns.
Yeah, so it was in my campaign where Loki was helping some of his old friends, which were NPCs, to steal a wand that is tied to the god of magic in that campaign. And unbeknownst to them, there was essentially a guardian for this wand, which was a Deva who was disguised as a human cleric. And he was essentially guarding it in the room. Fortunately, was not spotted by anyone in that group. And Loki managed to share their entire plan out loud. The Deva heard it, and then after Loki sort of came back to his senses, the Deva approached them.
Do you have a name for this Deva?
His name was Deacon.
Deacon.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the name that he gave. He does have a different name.
Yeah.
And so Deacon basically tried to chase them down to get the wand back. He, if I remember correctly, actually rolled really horribly most of the fight.
For the sleet storm,
I think
wasn't
he
it?
got like tripped over, fell. He
Yeah.
had a rough life.
So I started off with the combat with getting my best friend turned invisible and just having him leave. Like the entire room. I think he got out of the room before the Deva closed the door and then locked it with magic. One of the thief NPCs managed to unlock the door, and then he ran out. And then basically it was me and High Elf. I don't know if she was a fighter or a thief herself.
Oh, she's a rogue.
Oh, she was a rogue herself. Okay. After I knew that those two were out, I was like, run. Don't stay here, run. I've got it. And I managed to trip up the Deva just enough for us to get far enough away. I think we ran into a room around this mansion. I literally just threw her out of a window and then cast Featherfall on her. And then I was like, I could totally just jump out too. But it has wings, so it'll catch us. So instead of having him chase my best friend and my two new friends, I sat down and took the fall for it all.
Yeah, this Deva is working with this noble.
Yeah, and I can actually show a bit of that. That's okay. So, Deacon's mission is he was actually sent by the god of magic on this quest, essentially. So where he sort of behind the scenes is there to advise and support this noble. The noble's name is Udo Milner. And essentially, Deacon's mission is to make sure that Milner reclaims his birthright, essentially, which is to be, once again, in charge of an empire that has fallen on hard times.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that involves Milner having possession of this wand.
For now.
And Deacon is there in addition to advising Milner to make sure that wand doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Unfortunately for them, there are people that do know this wand exists and where it is, and have, such as in the case when Loki went to try, are attempting to steal it away.
It's interesting to think that the gods are controlling the empire or trying to get this accomplished. Like,
right. Now, what I will say, and this
is the god of magic,
somewhat
though.
different from my world compared to other worlds, is my gods, in a lot of instances, are a lot more proactive about certain things. Mm-hmm. So, while how we were describing, Devas are kind of like work behind the scenes and kind of like pop up on occasion and then planetars and later solars are only sent in more and more dire needs.
Mm-hmm.
My world doesn't necessarily pertain to that. There are instances where a certain god may decide it needs to do something in the world to affect it, and in doing so will send, say, a deva on a mission, or could send a planetar to, like, destroy maybe, like, an evil cult or something.
Right. Does anyone else have plans for him?
Or ideas.
Or ideas?
In my campaign, the way that I have the gods, and I know we're talking about angels here, but unfortunately they're very directly related to them. The way that I have it is that everyone worships the gods individually. So whether your culture, and this is kind of how I opened it up for players, be like, hey, I want to worship Thor. Okay, cool, you worship Thor. Okay, cool, you worship Palor. They just happen to be the same person, or stuff like that. Like, I have that open until the story progresses far enough that the characters, or maybe knowledgeable NPCs, have hired the characters to find information that dictates otherwise, because there is a difference in my campaign that I don't want to share yet, because I feel like it'll be a big reveal as far as the way that magic works and the gods, how they work, and so on and so forth. That is not to say that there aren't angels in the world, but unlike just the devas having the polymorph ability, all three of them have the polymorph ability in my campaign. So you guys have actually seen 2 of them. But I won't say as to who. I just leave it at that cliffhanger. But other than that, like, their ideas, I mean, you can keep them, like, in Daniel's campaign where they're very proactive. You can keep them in mine where they're just waiting on the sidelines. You can keep them as traditional where they're just in the back lines. Whatever you do, be sure that not, I would say, I would argue against using them to save a party. Like, if a party's going to fail, a party's going to fail. If you're going to save them, make it a one-time thing. Don't make it every time you've got an angel watching over you, and every time you guys start to die, or, I just cast Raise Dead on you.
Right. And I discussed that with the Empyrean episode. Like, one got placed on there to save one of the party members. Just that. And then he left.
So unless we have any other ideas, I think that'll wrap it up for today's episode.
I've really convinced myself of using my own idea with the temple and the solars.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Also, we're going to figure out a way to put out a poll there so you guys can start making decisions on what we talk about next.
Suggestions, ideas.
Yeah, and we'll get to work on that, and then in the next few episodes we'll hopefully get some things out before you guys start discussing what you guys want to listen to. So, until next time. Thank you for staying at the Bardic Inn. If you would like to hear more, we will be uploading new content Thursdays at noon PST on
iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, and Podbean.
If you have any recommendations on future content, you can leave a comment on these various platforms, or you can contact us on Twitter at the Bardic Inn, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Bardic Inn.
We're your local bards.
Daniel,
Andrew,
Dan,
And Jake.
be inspired.